Ashe family, welcome back to another episode of My Unapologetic Perspective. This is the podcast where we give our point of view on controversial topics from my experience, Black history, and our knowledge as African Americans. Black history presently lives in us so we can continue to excel into the future. It's one thing to know Black history, it's another thing to take advantage of what the people in Black history did for you. I am your host, Martre Baker Stevens, and to the right of me, he go gym to gym. And I say gym to gym because he coached 3 different teams in youth basketball where he may be in one gym and got to shoot over to the next gym and make it back to the other gym. You heard? No other than Shaquan Battle.
Yeah.
Mr. Break down the hip hop albums for you. You hear me? And to the right of him, he needs no introduction. You know what I mean? He started Hoops Kids down at the ball diamond for the kids to have something in the community. Huh? You hear him dropping gems on here, Mr. I hate the southern states. No other than Jerome Battle. What's up? And we appreciate all the love and support we've been getting. Shout out to all of the first time listeners, last time listeners, for the people who just clicking on this on YouTube because you may have liked the artwork or you may have found the title enticing. If you're just tuning in, this is the podcast where we just keep it real, and this is just our perspective. We ain't trying to be right or wrong. We're just trying to give our perspective on our own experience and what Black history says. To all the people who clicked on this just to disagree with Black people, what up? You know what I mean? We're going to talk about systematic racism. We're going to talk about racism. We're going to talk about all that stuff. You know what I mean? Continue to comment, continue to share, continue to disagree with us. We don't give a damn.
That's right.
But appreciate y'all. How are y'all?
I'm good. I'm good.
How was your birthday yesterday?
It was good. Right. It was good. 35, 5 years closer to 40.
For sure.
But that's the goal is to get older.
That's so, Black people math. We always want to round something up. Yeah. And see something on social media that says something $70. Black people say, well, that's damn near $100.
Fact.
Black math.
It's only $30 away from being 100.
I got a question for y'all before we start. What's a better year? 1993, where you had Wu-Tang, Into the Wu, Snoop Dogg, Doggy Style, Menace to Society, and Poetic Justice. 1995, Tupac released Me Against the World, Mobb Deep, Infamous, Friday, Higher Learning Movie. Or 1996, Jay-Z released Reasonable Doubt, Outkast released AT-Aliens, and then the movies was Set It Off and Juice. What's a better year?
Is there a difference?
Huh?
Is there a difference? I mean, when you think about it, all 3 of them represented the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, just, I won't even say 3 different eras because that's still the same era.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because that's one of the things I want to talk about. But I don't see a difference between the 3. I can't say which one was better. Because in my opinion, especially when it comes to more so the movies than the music, but even the music to a certain degree, at the time, we considered it to be hot.
Yeah.
When you think about it now, it goes back to some of the things we talked about before, that cognitive dissonance is where really and truly some of that is the demise of the Black community.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I'm not talking about censorship. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about when you look at the detriment that those, and not per se the music or the movies, but just the mentality and then the things that were selling in the entertainment world and who the target audience was.
Yeah, but with these especially, I don't think these were meant to do that. These were meant to tell a story from the Black perspective, and people took that had nothing to do with this type of lifestyle, and they wanted to become that to where it became a detriment. So when you think about stuff like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, those were to give you insight on things that happen on a daily basis within that community.
Yeah, unfortunately, the flip side is it can do that, but does it do that at a higher rate than it does to glorify those things?
Right.
Because when you think about the music and what people like listening to, even if the intent is not to glorify it, it's what sells and it's what people hear.
Right.
And then in turn, people emulate those things,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's intentional or not. That's the whole concept of cognitive dissonance. Is that I'll give you an example. People say smoking cigarettes is a form of cognitive dissonance, but just smoking cigarettes because you know it's bad for you and still doing it, which is the behavior, is not cognitive dissonance. It's when you're already showing symptoms of smoking and you continue to smoke. It's cognitive dissonance, meaning I got proof. I've confirmed that within myself, yet I still continue to do it.
Right.
So when you think about that type of music, yeah, people can listen to glorifying murder and womanizing and drugs, whether it's drug use or drug selling. But if they have not lived that lifestyle, if no portion of that is something that they've lived, not necessarily cognitive dissonance. It's just something that they're listening to that they may know something about. They may have seen other people go through.
Right.
But when you've experienced it yourself, when you've lost somebody to senseless murders or gang murders, and you still continue to participate in it, that's cognitive dissonance.
Right.
So regardless of what the intent was, it's the behavior to go against what you know because you've experienced it yourself.
So do you think that John Singleton, that's what his mission was, or this is just something that he wanted to do? He didn't even know if it would sell. This is just something that came from his perspective and wanted to put on film.
I don't believe that was his intent, is to cause the negative part. I don't believe that was his intent. However, I will tell you this, and then I'll just go into my little segment real quick, Shaquan, before you do yours. Is let's look at it from the music spectrum that we talked about last week. And this applies in this case wholeheartedly. I did, before that podcast, the last podcast, I did a little research. I just didn't get into it, but I'm gonna get into it now. We know that Black people get on the radio every day in white-owned companies, and white-owned stations, white-owned sponsors. And according to this one white agent for record companies and advertisers, he says, Black people get on the radio every day in white-owned companies, white-owned stations, and white-owned sponsors that play the role of hypersexualized, hyper-criminalized Black people, mainly Black men. A white recording and advertising agent reported that he asked that advertisers, I have 100 songs a day that celebrate killing animals. Would you play them on your station? They said, absolutely not. He said, I have 100 songs a day that will talk about assaulting women and abusing kids. Would you play them on your stations? They said, absolutely not. He says, I have 100 songs that talk about murdering Blacks. Would you play them on your station? They said, well, it depends. I said, depends on what? Depends on who it's done by and who it's branded for. If we can get Black folks to sing or rap about it, we can brand it for young Black audience. I think there's money to be made. I think there is an American appetite to see these people in that light. He said, how can you say that? This white advertiser responded, I can say that because we have the proof. It's what they create. It's what go on in their community. And it's what sells. You can't make this up. So in terms of that, the statistics and surveys say it's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And which is true. Where else other than the Black community does a person say, I'm inspired to make a song that celebrates murdering another person? And then another person says, I like to put that on my radio station. And another person says, I like to pay for it. And then there's an audience that says, I love to hear it. Because even though white people buy more rap music because they know, and when they hear that type of stuff, they know who to turn to for those type of things. They can listen to Black music. Now, with that said, there's also another most important part about this is the same advertiser says that he asks record labels and radio stations and companies, What about your name? What about your brand? What about your value? And the largest radio station in the world said, it's okay. It's okay that we only have drug dealers on our black youth stations. It's okay that we only have murderers and gangbangers on our black youth stations. We support black charities. We give out water at Martin Luther King Day parades. I think we got it covered. We bought them off. Mm-hmm. In essence, there's money to be made with these type of things. Did John Singleton think that he was going to promote and glorify the negative parts and just exposing what really goes on in the hood? Probably not. But somebody did. Somebody figured there's an audience for this. How do we know? Go all the way back to NWA. Even the title of the group, Niggas with an Attitude, sold as NWA. So there's an appetite for it. So I believe that nobody's going to make a movie, especially a movie that is coming from a black perspective, unless they know that it's going to sell.
So I want to try to arrive where you arrived by not negating the creativity part.
That's right.
So are you saying that black artists and even John Singleton, even Tyler Perry, are still pawns on a chessboard to the point where we use your creativity to where you think you're just showing something, but we are looking at the negative of it. You're looking at the perspective and the positivity and of it. We're looking to try to take your creativity and make it negativity for the masses. Because when we talk about rap in general, when you talk about Grandmaster Flash and the message, this is when we talk about real music. When you talk about the realness of MCing and rapping, that we put this on wax so that everybody can understand our story. So when you talk about 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old rappers, they're talking about, especially back in those days, they're talking about their experiences. So they're autobiographers who are giving their story to the rest of the world. But I believe what you're saying is the record companies, the record executives aren't looking at it that way.
And I'm not saying that John Singleton is a pawn. I'm not saying that they don't know what's going to happen, because obviously I think in a lot of situations, the artists, the filmmakers, the directors, the producers, the writers, they do know what's going to happen, but they're hoping that they can use the publicity and the money from those situations to make a difference. So I'm not saying that they don't know. I'm not saying that they're pawns. They could in fact know, but they feel like that the good that I can do from this maybe will outweigh the bad that may come from it. So that part I don't know. I mean, you can think about Jay-Z, and Jay-Z used to rap about some of the same things, but you also see where he's investing his money now. Maybe he's saying, okay, I use it as a platform to get what I need, so now I can go make a difference.
Right.
So I'm not saying that that's not the case. What I'm saying is, from white America's perspective, they don't care about that.
Right.
It's the fact that I get to glorify things that you create, things that you say happen in your community, and I get to make money off of it. How you perceive it, I could give a shit. How it impacts your neighborhoods, I don't care.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, is that this happens on a regular basis. And the most important part was about what the record company said. The largest record company said, we believe we got that covered. We bought and paid for it. We own it. They have no problem owning rap music. They have no problem owning gangster rap. Think about all the white people that came out and said they played a big part in gangster rap and making it mainstream America, so that you can not only buy it in a record store, but hear it on a radio station. Because remember, when gangster rap started, you couldn't buy certain things, had explicit lyrics, you couldn't buy it, and they wouldn't play it on the radio. But gangster rap played on the radio. I remember hearing Scarface and NWA. Fuck the Police played on the radio, right? Who created that? Who allowed that to happen?
Right.
And for what reason?
Good point.
You look at 2012, Chief Keef. Life imitates art. Joe Budden says it all the time. Chief Keef came out with a song called I don't like. Changed the course of rap till this day. It's op music. But it's the same thing that Bake just said, far as the years, the movies, and the music that he named, which was before Boys in the Hood. We didn't know what it looked like in Watts or Compton or anything like that, or Minister Society. We didn't know what it looked like in the hood. So when we watched these movies, it gave us an insight of what these rappers were talking about. You look at New Jack City. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what New York looked like before that. Then we get New Jack City, and it automatically think that's what's happening in those areas. And with Chief Keef, Chief Keef's fan base is large, but it's mainly white people. That, yes, we love the music, we champion the music, but it's the white people that made him famous. And it's changed the way hip hop is now. Like Bakes earlier, you said, Grandmaster Flash and all of those people put music on the airways to, warn black people or to help black people. But again, for me, it's Chief Keef them putting on the record what they see every day. Now, white people are making money off of that. Chief Keef not necessarily making money off of that. But if I had to choose one of those years that you chose, I'm probably gonna choose. What was the last one you said?
96.
96. I think I'm gonna choose 96.
Yeah, and I want to go just to wrap this part up. I want to just touch on what you just said, is that it gave you an insight into what it's like in those places. When you talk about New York, when you talk about South Central LA. But I believe the problem and the disconnect happened when people, like you said, realized that they can make money off mm-hmm. of it. And that's all you seen. Mm-hmm. So when you think about Compton, Watts, or South Central LA, or New York, or Chicago, or these places, that's all you think of. So you only think of the negative. You don't see the positive aspects. So nobody was making movies on the positive things that was happening in those communities. Right. Nobody was pointing out the people who were being successful in those communities. So we got dehumanization porn, because now you went from John Singleton showing this to where you had white producers producing movies like this to try to show what's going on in the hood that wasn't even from there, right. Because they understand what generated wealth. That's right. So you missed out on all of those things. But good start. Good. That's a really good start. Let's transition to politics. Tim Scott. Tim Scott said that he faced racism, but America is not a racist country.
Who Tim Scott? He black or white?
Tim Scott is the black Republican that's running for president.
Okay. South Carolina.
And he's not going to win. Because like as Draymond Green told Paul Pierce, they don't love you like that. This is the same guy, Tim Scott, who wants police reform because he's admitted that he's been pulled over about 18 times for driving while black. But yet America is not a racist country. This is the same Tim Scott who slammed Florida's Black History curriculum about black people benefiting from slavery. But America is not a racist country. And he watched his representatives of his own party approve of this. And if that person wins, Governor DeSantis, he is going to basically support that person that helped create this curriculum. Tim Scott wasn't able to attend Presbyterian College because they genuinely wanted him. He was able to attend that college is because they were forced to accept black students due to affirmative action. And Tim Scott is one of the people who spoke out recently about his opposition to affirmative action. He also went to Charleston Southern, that was founded by racist white people who didn't create the college for his black ass to be able to go there. But due to affirmative action and black people fighting in the Brown versus the Board of Education, he was able to attend Charleston Southern. When Tim Scott worked at Allstate after college, the company was actively looking for black agents for their affirmative action program. Tim Scott was appointed by Nikki Haley to fill the seat of the South Carolina senator for one reason and one reason only. It's because South Carolina was facing backlash for being a racist state because of people flying the Confederate flag on state buildings and Confederate flags all over the place.
Yep.
So they put a black face as the senator to say that we're not racist. Tim Scott is not the American dream that he thinks he is. He's the poster boy as the black guy to stand in front of all of these white people and says, everything is all right because I'm standing in front of you. I made it. We all know somebody who came from nothing and became something. We all know of people who've had everything and lost it all just because they didn't have the work ethic to be able to keep it. But we don't use that as a measuring stick for what we call the American dream. We have records and laws that was put into place to prevent the advancement for blacks. We have programs that are still in place today to help modify the destruction that those laws caused. If America wasn't built on racism, as Malcolm X said, there would be no need for new laws. Mm-hmm. There would be no need for affirmative action if blacks weren't denied the opportunity. There would have been no need for amendments if blacks were just treated as citizens from the beginning. No need for words like diversity, inclusion. Mm-hmm. But when those things are removed, the statistics of equality and opportunity goes down for black people. We've always had people who have been successful despite the fact. We talk about it on this podcast all the time. Black people who were successful despite the fact. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that the rules didn't exist.
What you mean by despite the fact?
Despite the fact means, let's just say, we know that millions of people were enslaved. Mm-hmm. There were black people who were granted their freedom from slavery. But does a free black person negate the fact that the slavery rules existed? No. Mm-hmm. If a black person purchased a home in a white neighborhood, does that exclude the fact that redlining existed? If a black man accused of a crime in the South during the Jim Crow era and he was found not guilty, does that exclude the fact that thousands of black people were found guilty in 10 minutes by a jury down south? No. So a person like Tim Scott who ignores the disproportionate statistics and the conditions that help shape the black communities and the discrimination that helps shape the white infrastructure in this country to say, hey, look at me, nothing's stopping you because I'm successful. I hate to use this word, but that's coonery.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's coonery. You cannot look at your own life and be exalted up to the top by no merit at all, as they like to say, because Tim Scott wasn't a good high school student. They said this, but he still went to college because of affirmative action. Mm-hmm. He wasn't Senator Quality, but he was put in that position because Nikki Haley needed a blackface. This is not due to merit. So when you talk about racism not existing in this country, you're the perfect example of why racism exists in this country.
And why you needed affirmative action.
Exactly. That is the type of things that just irk me, because like I said, you can get famous, you can get pushed to the top easy by just speaking down on the black community. And that's what people like Tim Scott and Eldridge do, and Candace Owens. That's what right. They do.
I'm with you. Is that, I've been asking this question on a few episodes now. Why does white America hate black Americans so much? Why do white people hate us so much? And today, based on what you just said, I'm gonna give you one of the many answers that I've encountered, because there are quite a few answers as to why white America hate us. But this answer is one that I've heard from someone white. You hate us because you don't understand us. And Bake will love this. This is Stokely Carmichael, was once asked in an interview if he could stand in front of a white community and say anything he wanted, what would he say? And he said, in so many words, I'm gonna do a little paraphrasing. He said he would say to the white community, Understand yourself, white man. The white man's burden should not have been preached in Africa to Negroes, to the black man, or to African Americans. It should have been preached amongst yourself and your kind. You have done nothing but attempted to destroy the black man. You've taken away things, and you've taken us away from things such as our heritage, our language, our land, our legacy, our religion, our culture, our family. You've attempted to break us. You've enslaved us. You've killed us, whipped us, inflicted fear and pain upon us, physically and psychologically. You've hung us. You've destroyed black communities and businesses, discriminated against us, segregated us, refused to provide equality in terms of education, housing, employment, financial and economical opportunities. You created laws, at best, that did not include or pertain to blacks, and when it did, it was just another component of white supremacy. You call us savages. You treat animals better than you treat us. And you did all of this, and you called it civilization. But in fact, you are the ones that are the savages. You are the ones that are uncivilized. And now we're standing up and telling you, you need to civilize yourselves. And when I think about politics, that's where we are. We're in a process of trying to civilize the majority because they've been uncivilized for so long. We're trying to teach them about true humanity because they've been inhumane for so long, targeted against the black man in America. And it blows my mind that people still think that racism does not exist to the level that we're saying that it does. That's what drives me crazy. How many black people need to be murdered innocently by white Americans, not just police officers, because we always talk about police brutality, but not just by the blue, but by just the white. How many people have to be murdered? How many? Before white America and black America realizes, people like Tim Scott, that this is bigger than just George Floyd. This is bigger than just all the people who we cannot name on this podcast that have been victims. Emmett Till, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, even people that we may not even know the names of that's been victims of this white supremacy that we talk about. How many times does it have to happen? How many generations have to be negatively impacted by that before people understand this is not this podcast that's talking about that's making it so. We're just taking the evidence. We're just reporting what we know. That's all we're doing. This didn't just start yesterday. What has to happen before people recognize that this is a really true issue?
Right. When you say people recognize, you mean white and black, or white?
White and black, because people like Tim Scott doesn't believe that it happens like that either.
Right.
And it does, even though he knows. We talked about in the podcast before he even came out. We know he's been discriminated against living in South Carolina.
Yep.
We know that. Now he's coming out saying what we knew all along. We know you've been discriminated against.
He's admitted that he has, but he's still in that bubble. Him and Candace Owens have both admitted that they've been discriminated against, but still don't want to acknowledge that racism exists in a systematic way.
And Tim Scott don't want change. You know what he wants? Votes.
Yeah.
He wants votes. He don't want to make change, but he know in order to win, he's got to get some black people to vote for him.
Right.
And they're not going to vote for him just because he's black. So what he has to do is associate himself with blacks. Hey, we're going through the same struggle, brother.
Yeah.
I've been discriminated against. Vote for me and I'll change that. He ain't going to change a goddamn thing.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't going to change it because he doesn't care about that. He's already told you he does not feel like race played a part in what he's gotten or haven't gotten.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to change that. He just needs votes. That's all. He does not care about the black people. He does not care about the black man. He doesn't see himself as black until he gets pulled over by a white police officer.
Yeah.
He doesn't recognize. He doesn't relate to us.
It's a fact. You got anything?
Well, the reason I asked that is because I feel like even with the drug epidemic, it wasn't until because you got the crack era, you got all of that, but it wasn't until these drugs start showing up in the white neighborhoods that white people actually gave a fuck about it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like because it's the blue killing black and white killing black, white not gonna give a shit about us dying to the police or being hung. Even in 2023, people are still getting lynched and they saying it's suicide. They're not gonna give a fuck because it's not happening to them.
Considering music, this is what we was talking about. Remember Tupac, Soldier Story, the start of Soldier Story Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you got blacks killing blacks, whites killing blacks, cops killing blacks. 1993, right? That 93? That's 93. Soldier Story Part 1, right?
Me Against the World, maybe?
So you got him saying that. I know it's sometime in the 90s. You got him saying that in the 90s. Here we are in 2023.
91.
Saying the same exact shit. Over 30 years later, we still saying the same shit. You got blacks killing blacks. You got whites killing blacks. You got cops killing blacks. Again, we said this on the podcast. There's nowhere in history is there any documented instances where large groups of blacks, other than slave revolts, where blacks got together and said, let's go out and kill white people.
Yeah. I'm going to just skip over Tupac because anybody that knows me knows I follow the Tupac and Biggie murder investigation like I'm a part of it. And if we keep staying here at Tupac, I'm going to go into Keefe D and DeAndre Smith and Suge and Amir Muhammad. We're just going to skip it. But Keefe D should have shut his mouth. Y'all rappers and y'all public figures got to stop going up there to DJ Vlad and telling them all your damn business.
That's right.
That's a new segment on the podcast too. The should have shut up.
Should have shut up.
Segment.
I got a couple of things. Let's look at some real black Robin Hoods. The movie The Banker that came out when COVID was big, with Samuel L. Jackson and Aaron Mackey. It's based off two real people, Bernard Garrett and Joseph Morris. Bernard Garrett began buying properties in Los Angeles, and he took out a small loan from another rich realtor and basically bought property in a white neighborhood, basically an apartment building in a white neighborhood. And he ended up taking that small loan out and renting it out to black people and using that money to pay the loan off and gaining a profit. And then the white dude who he got the loan from decided, that he was good at what he did. So they went in business together and began buying property. Of course, he being a lot of the intellect behind it and the rich white man being the face of it, and basically created himself a net worth for being worth about $1.5 million. After that partner died, he began hiring other white people to be the face to carry out these deals because white people wouldn't sell to black people. So he began having white people be the front man. You go in, say that it's your company, act like me, I'll give you all the knowledge you need and you buy it and I'll run the operations. And he began being the brains in the shadow until he hooked up with Joseph Morris. Joseph owned 2 nightclubs, and together they brought one of the most important banks down there in Los Angeles, where the other banks was headquartered out of. And again, they coached a white face or somebody that could pass for white to go in, be the mouthpiece, be the face, while those two were basically the people that was the brains of the operation. So they would be in the building acting like a janitor or acting like the chauffeur while they hire somebody to go in there and act like the CEO so they can be able to buy their stuff. And then they also bought a white bank in Texas doing the same thing. And their ultimate goal was to basically to control capital so black people can begin to get loans for homes, get loans for small businesses, They even helped save a lot of churches and schools that was going under by providing them loans and the money that was necessary. And the only reason that they got locked up is because the white face that they put in charge of everything, he had some mishaps with the money, basically, and didn't know the laws, and they ended up getting caught and going to prison. But they were modern day Robin Hoods who had bought these banks and bought these properties and gave black people the opportunity and gave basically the blueprint that if when black people actually have the opportunity, they can thrive. But when you deny them capital and all of these other things, it's hard for them to do so. Also, Dear Presidents is based off a real life story starring Lorenz Tate and Chris Tucker about Vietnam War vets that robbed an armored truck.
That's right.
The real story is actually about Hayward T. Kirkland, who was a veteran in Vietnam. And in the movie, they actually killed some guards in a botched armored truck. But that's not actually what happened. Kirkland worked at the post office and realized that they were taking millions of dollars to the U.S. Treasury and just burning it. So he said, instead of, just burning it, let's innocently go in there, take the money, and we can give it back to our community. So they painted their faces white. And then when they robbed the guards, they even told the guards, tell the police that they were white, because we're giving this money back to the children of our community. So they robbed the truck successfully of $320,000. They took the money and brought a bunch of food, clothes, toys for the black community and just gave it out to the community. They even gave medical supplies to the local cultural center. And the only reason that they got caught is because one of the people from the robbery was just going around handing out $100 bills to anybody he passed in the street. And then when they arrested him, he told on everybody else. In the movie, Lorenz Tate actually went to prison for life and without parole. But in real life, he was actually paroled after 5 years, and he's a legend on his activism in that area. Secret games. In New Orleans, Louisiana, in the middle of Jim Crow, a secret basketball game was played between an all-black high school, St. Augustine, versus all-white high school, Jesuit. You can see this movie called Passing Glory that imitated this real-life story. St. Augustine, the black school, was beating everybody in basketball and football, but they couldn't call themselves the true city champs because an all-white team over there, Jesuit, was also beating everybody, but they couldn't play each other because it was against the law. This is during Jim Crow. So people would say that the all-white Jesuit team was the best team because they were athletic and they were smarter than the black players. So back then, of course, if you were white, you were smarter than black people. Right. So both teams finished with winning records. Didn't lose a game. And in the black newspaper, they said that St. Augustine was the city champs. And in the white newspaper said that Jesuits was the city champs. So the faculty and staff of both schools kept it secret and said, we're going to play each other. So they didn't tell anybody except for the players and their parents. They was the only ones that could attend the game because nobody else in the community could know because, like I said, it was against the law. And the all-black St. Augustine won by 1 point, and news spread across the city quickly. There was also another one in 1944, a secret game where nobody in attendance was all-black North Carolina College for the Negroes versus all-white Duke University medical team in Durham. So when you talk about all-white Duke University medical team, this is the team that basically they're graduate students. So they went to college for 4 years somewhere else, played at other schools. These was all Americans, and then they go and do their medical school at Duke, and they still had a team. So this was the first time black and white college students faced off on the same court since the invention of basketball 50 years earlier. The North Carolina College for Negroes played a fast-paced style that most teams have never seen or played before. They had flamboyant nicknames like Boogie Woogie and Big Dog. They can never measure themselves against great college teams because all black teams couldn't play in the NCAA tournament. Players were so careful that they borrowed other people's cars and took different routes to the gym to make sure that they weren't followed. You got to remember, this is against the law. They're not allowed to play each other. But people finally started gathering around the windows of the gym when they seen cars in the parking lot, but they couldn't get in. So you had 50 people like in the windows trying to watch this game. The unofficial score was the North Carolina College of Negroes 88 and the Duke Medical Team 44. The second game, they integrated and they played with each other. And when the people that were still alive that were interviewed for this game had one thing to say about it. It was a fun day and a fun game.
Absolutely.
So two secret games that happened. All blacks, all white teams.
We ain't playing Jeju.
That's actually a good movie.
Yeah.
Passing Glory.
Yeah.
I used to love that movie as a kid.
I know I talked about how the largest record company in the world, radio station in the world, talked about that they feel like they paid for and bought black music and what it represented as they played it on their radios, even though it talked about disparaging things that black people did to themselves. Bought and paid for. And I think about bought and paid for. Roy Hamilton, during the 1950s and 60s, Roy was a black singer. By combining semi-classical technique with traditional black gospel feeling and sound, he brought soul to Great America, which is greater white America. Roy's audiences included those of Nat King Cole, Sarah Vaughan, Victor Moan.
Victor
Moan. His songs that included You'll Never Walk Alone and Unchained Melody. Roy inspired legendary singers like Sam Cooke, you're a Sam Cooke fan.
Absolutely.
He started in gospel music, and Roy inspired him to switch over to what they call secular music. Go outside of your gospel roots. Hamilton also was the biggest influence on what most white Americans would consider the largest in pop music or even rock and roll, which is Elvis Presley and his ballad style of singing. If you listen to Roy's songs, you can certainly hear the influence that he had on Elvis. Some say that Elvis stole or borrowed Roy's singing style and sound. In early July 1969, Roy suffered a massive, what they call a stroke, but it was a cerebral hemorrhage, where he lay in a hospital in a coma for more than a week. On July 20th, he was removed from life support and died. He was 40 years old. Roy's son revealed that Elvis Presley sent Roy's wife, Myrna, a rose every day that Roy was in the hospital. When Roy finally passed away, Elvis sent Myrna flowers for the next 6 months. At the time of his death, Roy was heavily in debt, forcing him to just a week before his medical complication to borrow heavily on his insurance policy to pay off back taxes. When he died, Myrna was forced to publicly seek funds for his burial. Elvis is said to have covered Roy's outstanding medical bills and funeral costs. So the question is, did Elvis really steal or borrow Roy's singing style and sound? Was it bought and paid for? Just as the industry has admitted doing so with other black people. You know, and I'm not saying, nor are we in this podcast saying that all white people are racist. Let's be clear. And I think we've said that before.
You can be clear all you want.
And we know that all white people aren't racist. You know how we know? Because we don't know all white people.
Right.
And there are some white people that are racist, or they do or say things that are racist, but aren't technically racist. They just don't really know the things that they're doing are racist.
It's a normal thinking.
That's right.
Yeah. You don't even know where it comes from.
But another one that Baker always mentions, James Baldwin, talks about this component in asking black people to do the impossible. And this is what James Baldwin said. You are asking us to take the will before the deed. I don't know what every white person in this country may feel, but I can only include what they may feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if a white Christian hate Negroes or not. But I know we have a Christian church that is for white and a Christian church that is for blacks. As Malcolm X once put it, the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. Says a great deal to me about a Christian nation, that I cannot afford to trust most white Christians, and certainly cannot afford to trust the Christian church. I do not know whether labor unions and bosses really hate me, but I know that I'm not in their unions. I'm not represented by their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobbyists really hate blacks, but I know that the real estate lobbyists lobby to keep me in the ghettos. I don't know if the Board of Education really hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my kids to read and the schools we have to go to. Now here's the evidence. And you want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my life, my freedom, and my family on some idealism that you assure me exists in America, which I've never seen. And, you know, and that for me, that's what I want people, white people mainly, to understand is, you tell me that racism does not exist at the level that we talk about, and that the America you see exists. But if your institutions haven't shown me that, your actions as a whole hasn't shown me that, that means I've never seen this America that you speak of. I have not bear witness to that. Nor has a majority of the black people in this country. You'll have people like Tim Scott say that he's witnessed it, but what he really witnessed was affirmative action. Something that gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was black, and that racism and inequality does exist. So don't talk to me about what you can assure me of. Let your institutions prove that.
For sure.
Which we have not seen. At least I haven't seen it.
That's facts. That's facts.
Let's end on a good note. Locally, Lynchburg, Roanoke, surrounding counties, I've had the privilege of seeing some really great football over the last 2 months, all ran by black organizations. Some black men, some organizations as a black woman. You got the Hellcats, you got the Silverbacks, you got Powerhouse, you got the Grizzlies, you got the Saints, you got the Wolfpack, you got the Buffaloes, you got all these different teams. You got the Crusaders, you got all these different teams in this one small area with a lot of talent. And every Saturday, I go out there. It's the same thing you used to say for Hoop Kids. Is you created a program to keep the kids off the street from 6 to 7:30. From 6 to 7:30, I know this kid could not have been where y'all say he's been because he was down here doing something that he loved to do. And watching these kids play competitive football. Forget the football part. To watch these kids be respectful to their coaches, to the parents, to the other team, but they still go out there and hit you in the mouth and play football. And you see, because a lot of times you see, oh, the coach got to go pick up 7, 8 kids. Parents is bringing these kids to the game. It might be one parent, it might be the family bringing the kid to the game. But to see all of these black people come together to form a football league that's this great, because you got 2 different teams that are national champions in this one league. And I know people gonna say, you know, they see the teams arguing on faith. That's competitive spirit.
Yeah.
We want to play y'all. Y'all don't want to play us. So I'm going to keep doing something to antagonize you to get you to play us.
That's right.
And when they do play, it's the biggest talk of the city. Yesterday, I was at Heritage for 2 games, then shot over to EC Glass for a whole nother game. Just great football. And I don't think these organizations in this area get talked about enough far as what they're doing for these inner city kids that don't have anything but football. These kids are getting scholarships just off the fact that they run track. They haven't even seen them play football. They're getting scholarships for football just because coaches are seeing them in track.
Mm-hmm.
So I salute to all of those guys that run and women that run these organizations. They are doing a phenomenal job in the community, doing a phenomenal job with all of these kids.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's fire. We love y'all. Peace.